In this video, we'll introduce you to functions and how to use functions in R. We've already seen some functions, such as the mean function to find the average temperature in June. We've also used the min and max function to find the lowest and highest temperature in June also. Doing these by hand is quite difficult, such as for mean you have to add up all the numbers, and the min function you have to sort through all the numbers to find the solution. Fortunately, R has some built-in functions for us to do these. Before we go more into how to use functions, let's review what functions actually do. All functions work the same way. It takes an input, performs an operation on the input, and then produces an output. The input, operation, and output will differ from function to function. However, every function has these three elements. Let's look at the mean function as an example. The input it takes is a vector of numbers, such as 1, 1, 2, 5, and 1. The operation it performs is summing up all of these numbers in the vector, then dividing it by the length, which is how many numbers were in that vector. The result of that calculation would be 2, which is the mean, and that will be outputted. To use functions in R, you type the function name followed by the input, surrounded by parentheses. So if I wanted the absolute value of -2, I would type APS followed by -2 surrounded by parentheses. Most functions in R have self-explanatory names, such as the sum function, which will add up all the numbers in a vector. The length function, on the other hand, will count how many elements are there in the vector. So using these two functions, I can calculate the average June temperature. Fortunately, this is the same as the output coming from the mean function. There's also an st function which calculates the standard deviation of the vector. We can also calculate the standard deviation by hand using these calculations. First I calculate the deviation, then I calculate the square deviation by squaring the deviations above, and then I can calculate the mean square deviation by adding up all these square deviations, then dividing by 30. Then finally taking the square root. That will give me the standard deviation. Notice that this value is different from the answer coming from the st function. And the reason why is because the st function divides by 29 instead of 30. This is just a small note to let you know some more complicated functions may not behave exactly the way you think. But for this example, when the size of the data is large, the difference between these two answers is very small.